Ahoy there, proggers! And I hope you've been enjoying my exploration of the prog genre this month. I've been really focusing on the best prog bass players, the best prog drummers, the best prog bands, all that type of stuff we've been looking at. And of course, we then come to the greatest prog keyboardists of all time. And of course, this genre is known for its keyboard players. I've had a real problem doing this list, and like I say, this list is very subjective. It's based upon my own likes. It's also based upon my own experience in the prog music scene, because I have played on that scene quite extensively myself. So we have a very strange list. I apologise before we get started, because on this list there's going to be ties. There's going to be more than 10. Okay, and my rules are that I can't include jazz fusion. I'm not really going to include prog metal keyboardists. I'm really looking at classic prog. But I'm afraid a couple of jazz fusion keyboardists have snuck in. I'll explain why when we get there. Because for me, it's out and out prog and it's undeniable. So where do we start? At number 10. Well, I was very aware that there's a whole world of European prog. Bands like Can and Faust and Magma and all that I don't talk about so much. And I love all that stuff. I'm just not as knowledgeable on that stuff. It's not had such an influence on me. I like Magma. I've listened to Can. Jackie's drumming in Can is influential. But actually, when you look at the European prog keyboardists, they've been much more involved in ambience and exploring space. And actually, that's been very influential on modern music, especially dance music and ambient music, electronic music. I think the band that really exemplifies that and were groundbreaking would be this first at number 10. And should these really be at number 10? This is a monumental band, Tangerine Dream. There we go. Right, and so here at number 10, I've actually got 3 keyboard players. We've got Chris Frank on here, Edgar Froese, and Peter Baumann. Right, I think that this is so important and influential on progressive rock keyboard playing, on modern electronic music, dance music, electronic music, that this has to be on the list, and these 3 guys have to be on the list. So straight away I'm cheating, because at number 10 I've got 3 keyboard players, but there we go. This is what this list is going to be like as we go forward, right? So that's number 10, right? So I personally have played with some incredible keyboardists over the years, and I felt I should at least represent some of them. I wanted to put them all in. I've tended to play on the neo-prog prog scene, and on there it's some really incredible individualistic keyboard players. So at number 9 I've got 2 tied again. So the first I'm going to mention, and this guy really is one of my favourite prog keyboardists. If we were really just being completely subjective, this guy would be so high up on the list. And it is, of course, Martin Orford from IQ. I played in IQ for about 5 years. I played on the album Frequency. I played with Martin, or as we call him, Widge, a lot. And my love of his keyboard playing only grew the more I listened to it. He is the master, absolute master of the sort of prog keyboard solo. He's able to really mine the sounds of progressive rock, you know, Mellotron, the Moog, the organ. He knows how to control those, but his sound is signature. And the relationship he had with Mike Holmes, the guitarist of IQ, was absolutely magical. So many times when I was in the room with them, what they would do together, you would go, well, that's the sound of IQ. It's a really incredible symbiotic relationship. In real life, the real relationship between them when I was in the room could be quite fraught. That's all I'm going to say. It could be quite fraught, but I love them both. I really do. And I got to play on Martin Orford's second album. And if you check that out, some of my favourite drumming I've ever recorded. So all I could say is that this guy is an absolute prog rock keyboard beast. And that's why he's on my list. As well as my other ex-employer, Godfrey. From Frost. Jem really is a virtuoso prog keyboard player, and he is not anything else. He is not a jazz fusion keyboard player. He's not a pop keyboard player. This guy is a out and out prog keyboard player. But as some of you may know, some of you may not know, Jem has another career writing massive hit records. He's had a number of number ones. He wrote, or was one of the co-writers on Whole Again for Atomic Kitten. He's had Christmas number ones. He's an Ivor Novello award-winning songwriter. And because he's so involved in the contemporary pop scene, he brings to prog keyboarding, keyboard playing, a sort of much more modern aesthetic, really pulling on digital recording techniques, virtual synthesis, sound creation. He's an out-and-out prog keyboard player, but he doesn't rely, like Martin does, he doesn't rely on the cliched prog keyboard sound. He's a sound experimenter, but it's full-on prog. This is the debut album by Frost that I was a member. Very proud to be a member of this band, and I think this is one of the greatest prog keyboard performances in the history of progressive rock. Right, go and check it out if you don't know it, and you will see that is the case. Right, so that was number 9. Who have I got at number 8? Well, contentious choice again, but for me, I went round and round this, and this guy's got to be on. I would say this is perhaps the greatest keyboard player on this list, objectively, if we stand back, and that would be Chick Corea. Right, Chick Corea is known as a jazz keyboardist. He's known as the jazz fusion keyboard player, but he is out and out prog as well, right? This is one of the greatest progressive rock albums ever made. This is out and out prog. There's no two ways about it. Look at the cover. Look at the titles. Medieval Overture, The Sorceress, The Magician, The Jewel of the Jester and the Tyrant. Okay, Chick Corea is playing on this album acoustic piano, Fender Rhodes, clavinet, Mini Moog, Moog 15, Micro Mini Moog, ARP Odyssey, Yamaha organ, Polymoog, marimba and percussion. This is full on progressive rock keyboarding, and because Chick Corea is such a virtuoso, and I've done other videos on this, you've got to understand that the jazz musicians, right, the jazz fusion musicians are so way beyond any other musicians in any other genre. There's the prog keyboardists, as great as they are, do not possess the sort of technique that a Chick Corea or Keith Jarrett has, or Joe Zawinul has. These are phenomenal keyboardists. So when they turn their hand to making progressive rock, which they do here, it is unbelievable, right? I would say this is possibly the greatest progressive rock keyboard performance ever on this album, and that's why he gets on the list. Of course, Chick Corea does all sorts of different stuff, but there is a ton of progressive rock in his oeuvre. And by that I mean where he is drawing together rock music and classical compositional techniques and exploring certain mystical themes. If that's not prog, I don't know what is. Okay, I love Chick Corea. The next guy is my favourite keyboard player, and I'm sorry, you know, to have him here, which is at number, I think this is at number 6, I think, right? So this guy has done less progressive rock keyboarding. He's an out and out jazz fusion keyboard player, but again, this album, right? Jan Hammer, okay, is really responsible for that Moog sound. Okay, other progressive rock keyboardists have explored it, but this guy nails it. So if you're listening to any prog keyboardist who is playing a lead line, it's entirely influenced by this guy. But on this album, again, he makes one of the greatest progressive rock keyboard albums of all time. This is Jan Hammer's Tubular Bells. Okay, it's a concept album. It's based upon the first 7 days of the Bible. It's a creation concept. So we have darkness in search of Earth in Search of a Sun, his first track, then Light and Sun, second track Oceans and Continents, third track, and then the fourth track is Fourth Day, The Planets of the Trees, the fifth track is The Animals, sixth track is People, Us, and then the seventh track is The Seventh Day, When God Rested. And this is created entirely by Jan Hammer out of overdubbing keyboards. It was made 75, just after Tubular Bells, very influenced by Tubular Bells, greater than Tubular Bells, sorry, but it just is. On here he's playing piano, electric piano, Moog synthesizer, Oberhorn synthesizer and digital sequencer. He's playing the drums, percussion, he's got Freeman string synthesizer and mellotron. And on this album there's two guests, one is Dave Earl Johnson on congas and percussion, and the other is Stephen Kindler, who was a violinist in the second Mahavishnu. If you're a progger and you haven't heard this, you've got to hear it. This is out and out prog, and it's incredible, right? And this is why this guy makes his list, as well as the fact that he's working the Mahavishnu Orchestra and all that stuff is so verging on prog. And I think actually Jan Hammer's actual keyboard playing in itself and what he's done, especially the use of synthesis, puts him on this list and has to put him up pretty high up. I hope nobody will argue. I'm sure some of you are going to argue with this, and say these aren't prog keyboard. No, they won't do that. I know what they will do. They will say, well, if you're going to include Jan Hammer and Chick Corea, what about Robin Lumley from Brand X? Yeah, he nearly made the list as well. He nearly made the list. Right. At where are we at now? So at number 5, that's right, isn't it? Number 5. I've got 2 tied. I couldn't decide which one to have, and then I thought I've got to have both of them. So the first guy is Patrick Mraz. I can't find my copy of Relayer, and I really searched everywhere. So I've had to pull this album out, which has actually my favourite version of Gates of Delirium. But yeah, Patrick Mraz with his working refugee, with his own solo albums, and his incredible work in Yes. I think the guy that he replaced, Rick Wakeman, is obviously going to be on this list in a minute, and that's one of the most iconic keyboard players. So when Yes brought in somebody to replace him, really they should have come off very badly, but he doesn't, does he? He does not, because that performance on Relayer is absolutely mind-blowing. I think Patrick Mraz is such a virtuoso. He's able to go from sort of classical through to rock, through to progressive rock, and even to jazz fusion. And he seems to just give Yes such a kick up the arse when he comes in, that I think those albums that follow on are just as great. And that band's owe him so much. I think, to me, he is, in terms of virtuosity, one of the greatest prog keyboardists has ever lived. And this is the trouble with this list. Every one of these is an absolute beast, aren't they? They're all monsters that should be top of the list. So who's he tied with? And I haven't got any Gentle Giant albums here, but it's Kerry Minnier. Kerry Minnier, he is a true progressive rock keyboardist. This is a guy that did go through the Royal College of Music and finish it. He is a classical composer. He is a classical pianist that was able to take those skills and put it into a rock band. Right? I haven't spoken about Gentle Giant enough on this channel. They're one of my favourite bands. The reason why I don't discuss them is because I discovered Gentle Giant much later in my life. Right? I own all the albums digitally. I have never bought, in my classical album period, album buying period in my youth, I never really bought a Gentle Giant album. I discovered them much later. I really think that Gentle Giant it's prog's prog, isn't it? And Kerry Minnier is just absolutely incredible. The complexity, the originality, the depth of his compositions. And I think when he came, he had a compositional style which the whole band sort of got behind. Everyone else started to have to amalgamate into this incredible compositional style, which I believe stands up as with proper modern classical music, which a lot of prog rock doesn't. A lot of prog rock, if you take the rock out, compositionally, it's nowhere near as good as proper modern classical composition. But with Gentle Giant, I feel it is. Right, we've got to get a move on, because I'm going to run out of time if I'm not careful. So who have I got at number 4? It's the incredible Dave Stewart. I love Dave Stewart. Again, a phenomenal virtuoso keyboard. Incredible work in Hatfield and North. Incredible work in this band. An absolutely brilliant keyboard, again, that can just do the lot. You know, he can do the jazz fusion, he can do the classical, he can do pop music, he can do rock music. I think he's the underrated one in my list. I've put it up pretty high because I actually really love his keyboard playing. And I don't hear him aping other prog keyboardists. Dave Stewart has a sound all of his own. I love his Moog solos, the individual Moog solos that he does. So yeah, I'm going to get a move on this list, I think. I'm not going to say any more about this guy, but there he is at number 4. So we're now down to the big 3. Okay? Right, and I think you know who they are, and you know they've got to be on the list, and you are probably wondering about the order. What's the order? So at number 3, Tony Banks from Genesis. Alright, what can I say? Just incredible keyboard playing, incredible composition. I love his solo lines that he does. He's absolutely he's brilliant. He's number 3 on the list. I don't know what to say about him. Genesis's sound is an archetypal prog sound. I think that's what we've got with these last 3 keyboard players. It's an archetypal prog sound. They all are related in a way. It's all that mixture between, you know, classical, symphonic, compositional music with rock music, but they all do it in a different way. And I think Tony Banks, of the last 3, has an introversion which the other 2 don't have, and I think that's his charm. But it's also why he's number 3, and why these 2 giants that are here, because of not only their keyboard playing but the charisma of their personality. So which one's at number 2? I had a big long think about it, and it's not what you're going to expect, I don't think. Number 2, I have Rick Wakeman. Alright, and so yes, they're my favourite prog band. Rick Wakeman is just so iconic. He's gone beyond the prog genre into culture. This is what I say that is really important for musicians to get to the top of this, is that they have a cultural impact. People in the street know Rick Wakeman. He's iconic. You think of the long blonde hair, you know, the masses of keyboardists with his hands splayed across a number of keyboards with the silver cape. That could be the photograph on the front of the encyclopedia of prog. Okay, and that's why Rick Wakeman gets to number 2. Why is he not at number 1? Well, I think it's down not to him and anything to do with him. It's all down to the guy that is at number 1, and the absolute genius of this guy, which is of course Keith Emerson. And the thing with Keith Emerson is, unlike Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson is there from the start. Right, this is the first great prog keyboardist, and then he's the dominant prog keyboardist. In the nice, he really forges what prog keyboarding is about. Right, he really comes out as the Jimi Hendrix of the organ, and then from there with the LP, he really goes on to write the book. And I think there's a virtuosity to Keith Emerson's playing which is actually quite phenomenal. Both him and Rick have a virtuosity which is not touched by jazz or blues. It's entirely prog. It's entirely British in its aesthetic. And Keith Emerson, I think, again, is so iconic as a keyboard player, right? Has had that cultural influence in the same way Rick Wakeman has. But I think there's just an edge to what he does. It's the virtuosity. They're both virtuosos, but I feel that Keith Emerson's got a kind of virtuosity which really defines what prog keyboard playing is for me. Now on this channel, I've had a love-hate relationship going on with the LP. Actually doing these videos, I've started to really realise their genius. I've gone back and listened again. And out of those three musicians, it's Keith Emerson that just shines through. It's his vision and his drive, his approach to keyboard arrangements, his aesthetic. He's the guy. They're both three incredible musicians, but Keith Emerson is the guy. He makes number one on this list. Of course he does. So I'm hoping all the ELP fans I have upset, you know, over the last few weeks, I hope I'm now redeemed in your eyes. If I am I redeemed? Have I managed to claw back some redemption amongst the prog fans of this channel? I hope I have. So there you have it. These lists are not there as definitive things. They're there for us to talk about music, for us to share our opinions, and hopefully to have entertained you for 20 minutes. I hope I have. I try my best to make it interesting, you know, to make it surprising, to go down alleys that you didn't expect, but to go for the obvious. So that is my top 10, although there's probably about 17 of them, top 10 best, greatest prog keyboardists of all time. Oh, what more can I say? If you like these videos, please like. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. If you want to support me so I can do more, and I will do more if you go and join the Patreon, and there's 50 videos there that you've never seen on much more esoteric topics. So become a patron and go and have a butchers, as we say in Great Britain. There, I've finished. I'm going to move on to the next video. I'll see you on that one. Thanks for watching.